I was supposed to be studying. That was the excuse I'd been using all afternoon, and I kept repeating it in my head like it might turn into the truth if I said it enough times. Notes open, pen in hand, eyes on the page. Then she leaned over and whispered, "You're looking at more than your books." I didn't answer right away, not because I was clever, but because my brain stalled. The words landed too close, like someone stepping into your personal space without touching you. Close enough that you feel heat before contact. The place smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. A secondhand bookstore cafe wedged between a tailor and a phone repair shop. The kind of place where the tables wobble and nobody minds if you sit for hours as long as you keep one cup in front of you. I'd picked it because it was quiet, because it felt anonymous, because I thought I could disappear into it. She worked there part-time, not behind the counter. She handled inventory, pricing, things in the back. I knew this because she'd told me, once, without me asking. She had a way of offering information like that, casual, like she wasn't sure yet whether it mattered. She was standing beside my table now, one hand resting on the chair across from me. Not sitting, just there. Her hair was pulled back loosely, strands escaping around her face. Glasses low on her nose, not for style. She actually needed them. Mid-40s, maybe more. I wasn't good at guessing. There was something steady about her posture, like she didn't rush for anyone. "I'm sorry," I said finally, and immediately hated how young it sounded. I didn't realize I was staring. She smiled, but it wasn't flirtatious. It was amused, like she'd caught a habit, not a crime. "You always do that," she said. "Do what?" "Drift. You're here, but not here." She tapped the edge of my notebook with one finger. Not enough to move it, just enough to be noticed. It's interesting. No one had ever called that interesting before. Distracted, maybe. Lost. Spacey. Not interesting. I shrugged, pretending to reread a paragraph I'd already read 3 times. "It's a bad habit." "Most habits are," she said. Then she hesitated. Just a second. Long enough that I looked up again. "Do you want more coffee?" "I'm making a fresh pot." I should have said no. I'd already had enough caffeine, and I was planning to leave soon anyway. Instead, I nodded. She brought it back herself, even though someone else could have. Set it down gently, aligning the mug with the edge of the table like she cared about small things lining up. Our fingers brushed when I reached for it. Barely. Accident. Still, my hand froze around the handle she noticed. I could tell because she didn't pull away immediately. Just waited. Then stepped back, giving me space again. "You're studying for something important?" she asked. "Yeah. I mean, probably." I laughed, too quick. "It feels important." She tilted her head. "Studied me, not the books. You don't look like someone who knows where he's supposed to end up yet." The sentence stayed between us longer than it should have. The cafe hummed softly. Espresso machine, pages turning, a cough somewhere behind a shelf. I didn't know how to respond without admitting too much, so I didn't. She picked up an empty cup from a nearby table. "Don't stay too late," she said, already turning away. "You get that look when you're tired." "What look?" I asked. But she was already walking toward the back, leaving the question unanswered. I stared at my notes for another 20 minutes without writing a single word, still hearing the sound of her voice, still wondering how she knew exactly when I wasn't just looking at my books. I didn't plan to see her again so soon. I told myself that when I pushed open the bookstore door the next afternoon, the bell chiming too loudly for my liking. But she was there, kneeling on the floor near the back shelves, a stack of hardcovers spread around her like fallen bricks. She looked up when she heard me. Recognition flickered across her face before she masked it with something neutral. "Hey," she said. Not warm, not cold, just careful. "Need help?" The words came out before I could stop them. I was already setting my bag down. She hesitated. I caught it, the brief calculation in her eyes. Then she nodded. "If you want. These are heavier than they look." We worked in a narrow aisle where the light didn't quite reach. Dust hung in the air, visible when the ceiling fan stirred it. She handed me books without comment, her fingers brushing mine now and then, never lingering. I noticed how her hands moved, confident but tired, knuckles faintly red, a thin silver ring she twisted absent-mindedly when she thought. She didn't talk much. When she did, it was practical. Titles. Prices. Where things went. I filled the silence too often, pointing out covers, making small jokes that didn't quite land. She smiled politely, once or twice, but her eyes stayed distant. At some point, she paused and pressed her palm against the shelf, breathing out slowly. Just once, like she'd forgotten to breathe properly for a while. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. Too quickly. Then softer. "Just tired." I wanted to ask what from. Work. Life. The way she carried herself like someone used to holding things together. Instead, I picked up another book. She laughed once, short, surprised, when I nearly dropped a dictionary on my foot. The sound was different from her smile. Unguarded. It startled me enough that I looked at her, and she caught me doing it. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. Then, because I couldn't stop myself, "You don't laugh like you expect anyone to hear it." She looked away, cheeks coloring faintly. "That's a strange thing to notice." "I notice things," I said, and immediately wished I hadn't. The work slowed. The stack dwindled. The silence changed, less empty, more heavy. She sat back on her heels, rubbing the back of her neck. "I shouldn't let you help like this," she said. "It's not your job." "I don't mind." "I know." She met my eyes then, really met them. There was something there, hesitation maybe, or restraint. That's kind of the problem. The words landed between us, unfinished. I didn't ask her to explain. She stood, brushing dust from her jeans, and for a second her hand hovered near my arm like she might steady herself, and then she didn't. "Thank you," she said, stepping away. Professional again. I watched her walk toward the counter, shoulders squared, and felt the pull of something I didn't have a name for yet. All I knew was the space she left behind felt warmer than it should have, and I stayed there longer than necessary, staring at the shelf where her hand had been. The rain started earlier than forecasted, tapping the windows in soft, uneven bursts that made the bookstore feel smaller. By the time the lights dimmed to evening mode, there were only the two of us left, me pretending to read, her pretending not to notice. She locked the front door without looking back. The click echoed more than it should have. "You don't have to stay," she said, setting her keys on the counter. "I'll finish up." "I know." I closed the book anyway. Didn't stand. I just missed the bus. That was true. Mostly. The rain had slowed it, and maybe I'd slowed myself. She nodded, accepting the explanation without comment. Took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Up close, I could see faint lines there, evidence of years squinting at small print, maybe, or thinking too hard. We sat at opposite ends of the counter with a paper cup of tea between us, steam rising and fading. She'd insisted on making it. "Leftover leaves," she'd said, like an apology. The silence stretched. Not awkward, just full. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I waited. "Why do you come here so often?" Her voice was careful, but not accusing. I watched a drop of water race down the window. "It's quiet." She smiled faintly. "That's not the whole answer." "No," I admitted. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, then flipped it face down without reading whatever was on the screen. Her jaw tightened. I noticed because she rarely showed tension. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, then corrected herself. "No, but it will be." I wanted to reach across the counter. Not to touch her, just to be closer. I didn't. I kept my hands wrapped around my cup, feeling the heat seep in. "I shouldn't talk about this," she said suddenly. "But sometimes it feels like I missed my chance to." She stopped. Pressed her lips together. "Sorry. That's not fair to put on you." "You didn't," I said. "I mean, you can say it." She studied me, searching for something. Permission, maybe, or a reason to stop. Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. A sharp, impatient sound. She flinched. A man stood outside, jacket dripping, phone in hand. I recognized him from the way her shoulders stiffened. "I forgot my charger," he said through the glass, already pulling his hood back. "You still have the spare?" She exhaled slowly. "I'll get it." She stood, smoothing her shirt, putting distance between us. When she came back, keys in hand, she paused beside me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have started that." "You didn't finish it," I replied. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. "Exactly." She opened the door, letting the rain and the man in. I grabbed my bag. heart beating too fast for nothing to have happened. As I stepped outside, she touched my arm. Light, brief, almost accidental. "Be careful getting home," she said. I nodded, but my feet didn't move right away. We didn't talk for 3 days after that. Not really. I still came in. She still worked. Words stayed on the surface. Prices, receipts, weather, but something underneath had shifted, like furniture moved in a dark room. On the 4th evening, she asked me to stay after closing. She didn't say why. The shop felt hollow without the usual noise. No customers. No rain. Just the hum of the lights and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. She stood by the counter, arms folded, eyes fixed on a spot near my shoulder instead of my face. "This can't keep happening," she said. I waited. My throat felt tight. "We're acting like this is harmless," she continued, quieter now. "And it's not. At least, not to me." I leaned against the counter, hands flat. "I'm not trying to make it anything." "I know." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. "That's what scares me." The silence stretched until it felt physical. I noticed a small crack in the countertop I'd never seen before. How her breathing changed when she was nervous. How she didn't reach for her glasses. "I keep thinking I'm imagining it," she said. "That this pull is just boredom. Or loneliness. Or you being young and kind and—" She stopped, shaking her head. "That it will go away if I don't name it." "And if you do?" I asked. She swallowed. "Then I have to admit I want something I shouldn't." The words hit harder than anything she could have said about me. I stepped closer without meaning to, stopping when I felt the warmth of her body in front of me. "I don't want to be a mistake," I said. It came out rougher than I intended. Her breath caught. "You're not." A pause. "That's the problem." She reached out, then pulled her hand back, fingers curling into her palm like she'd burned herself on the thought. "This isn't about romance," she said, almost pleading. "It's about timing, and power, and me knowing better, and still wanting to pretend I don't." I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to argue. "So what do we do?" She didn't answer right away. She stepped back, creating space again. The distance felt deliberate. "Necessary. I need you to stop coming here for a while," she said. The room went very quiet. "Because you want me to," I said. Not accusing, just asking. "Because I don't trust myself," she replied. I searched her face for any sign she didn't mean it. There wasn't one. Just conflict. Just honesty. "Okay," I said. My voice sounded far away. "If that's what you need." She closed her eyes for a moment, like she was bracing against something. When she opened them again, they were wet but steady. "I hate that I'll miss you," she said. I stayed away like she asked. Longer than I thought I could. I walked different routes, past the cafe from the opposite sidewalk, told myself I was being mature about it. That this was what restraint looked like. On the 8th day, she found me instead. I was sitting on the low wall outside the bookstore, waiting for a ride, not looking at the door. I heard my name before I saw her. She didn't sound breathless, just unsure. "I wasn't sure you'd still come by here," she said. "I don't," I replied, then corrected myself. I don't come in." She nodded, accepting the technicality. There was a long pause where neither of us moved. Up close, she looked more tired than I remembered. Not messy tired. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time. "I need to give you something," she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, hesitating before unlocking it. Her thumb hovered, then pressed play. She didn't hand it to me right away. She listened first, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. A man's voice filled the small space between us. Older than me. Calm. Familiar to her. "If you're listening to this, it means I didn't make it back in time. I know you'll say you're fine. You always do. But don't close yourself off again. Promise me you won't disappear." The message ended abruptly. No goodbye, just the sound of movement, like he'd been interrupted. She passed me the phone then, like it weighed something. "My husband," she said. Not dramatically, just fact. 3 years ago. I didn't know what to say. I gave the phone back without pressing replay. "I haven't shown that to anyone," she continued. "I keep meaning to delete it. I never do." She looked at me, eyes sharp now. "You don't look like him." "Not really. But you listen the way he used to. Like you're trying to remember people." Something shifted inside me. Not jealousy. Not fear. just understanding arriving late. I'm sorry, I said. I know. She took a breath. When I asked you to stop coming in, it wasn't just about lines or age or rules. It was about realizing I'd started feeling awake again and hating myself for it. I leaned back against the wall, the stone cold through my jacket. I didn't know. That's why I needed you to, she said. Not to fix anything. Just to see me clearly. And then decide. Decide what? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and adjusted my collar, slow and deliberate. The touch was brief, but it landed hard. Whether this feeling is about us, she said softly, or about what I'm afraid of losing if I let it die again. A car pulled up behind me, my ride at last. The door opened. I stood, not trusting my voice. As I walked away, I realized the seismic part wasn't the message or the confession. It was the way she watched me go, like she was asking herself whether letting me leave was courage or another promise she wouldn't keep. We didn't rush back into anything after that. No dramatic reunion. No sudden clarity. Just a slow drift toward the same gravity, like pretending not to feel it had exhausted both of us. A week later, I was back inside the bookstore. Not hiding it this time. She was at the counter, sorting receipts, glasses on. She looked up and didn't say my name. Just nodded once, like she'd been expecting this exact moment. Hi, I said. Hi, she replied. That was it. No rules. No apologies. Just acknowledgement. I helped her close without asking. Swept the floor. Carried boxes. She didn't stop me. We moved around each other easily, careful but not distant. Like people who'd already had the difficult conversation and survived it. When the lights dimmed, she didn't flinch this time. I've been thinking, she said, sitting on one of the stools by the counter. About what you said. About not wanting to be a mistake. I leaned against the shelf across from her. And that maybe mistakes aren't always about what we feel. She took off her glasses and set them beside her. Sometimes they're about what we refuse to admit. I waited. I'd learned when not to interrupt her. I don't want to disappear again, she continued. And I don't want to pretend this is nothing. But I also won't pretend it's simple. She looked at me then. Direct. Honest. If we do this, it has to be slow. And careful. And real. I nodded. I can do slow. She smiled at that. Small. Relieved. Tired. We didn't move closer right away. Just sat there, the space between us narrowing without effort. At some point, she reached for the mug I'd left on the counter and found it cold. She made a face. You always forget to drink it, she said. So do you, I replied. She laughed quietly. Then her hand rested on the counter near mine. Not touching, just there. I shifted my fingers slightly, and they brushed hers. Neither of us pulled away. The contact wasn't electric. It was grounding. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder, light enough that I could have stepped back if I wanted to. I didn't. I felt her exhale, long and steady, like she'd finally stopped bracing herself. This doesn't fix anything, she murmured. I know, but it feels honest. That's enough, I said. We stayed like that until the clock on the wall ticked too loudly to ignore. No promises. No plans. Just two people choosing not to look away anymore. When we finally stood, she squeezed my hand once before letting go. Tomorrow, she said. Not a question. Not an invitation. Just certainty. And for the first time since I'd walked in with my books and my excuses, I believed her. I'm telling this from a quieter place now. Not because everything turned perfect, but because it finally settled into something honest. We didn't rush forward after that night. No sudden labels. No dramatic shift other people could point at and say that's when it happened. What changed was smaller than that. More private. She started leaving the light on in the back room when I stayed late. I stopped pretending I came in just for the books. We learned each other's rhythms, when to talk, when to let silence do the work. She's still careful, still pauses before saying certain things. But the distance she once kept like armor softened. I see it in the way she rests her hand on my arm when she's tired. In how she lets herself laugh fully now, without catching it halfway like she used to. She doesn't disappear anymore. As for me, I stopped confusing attention with meaning. I stopped watching from the edge, waiting to be invited into my own life. Being with her didn't make me older or wiser overnight. It made me more present. It taught me that wanting something isn't the same as taking it, and that restraint, when it's chosen together, can be intimate in its own way. Sometimes we sit in the bookstore after closing, lights low, no music on, just the hum of the place holding us. She'll lean her head against my shoulder, and I'll feel the weight of it. Not heavy, just real. Grounded. Earned. We don't talk much about the future. Not because we're afraid of it, but because we're not running from the present anymore. Love, I've learned, doesn't always arrive loud or obvious. Sometimes it shows up quietly, asking if you're brave enough to stay still and let it be what it is. I think about that first day a lot. The way she leaned over and said I was looking at more than my books. She was right. I was looking for something I didn't have language for yet. Something human. Complicated. Worth waiting for. And I'm still learning. We both are. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?